It was a place where everybody who was a teenager used to go on a Saturday night and have fun.
Everything was just buzzing. Everything was new. Everyone wanted to listen to music and everyone wanted to see you in whatever group you were playing in.
Hi, my name is Dave Heaviside, bass player and vocalist from Barrow.
Hi, my name is Dave McGurty. I play keyboards.
Hi, my name is Barry Parsons.
My name is John Hutchinson.
My name is Mike Kidson, local drummer from Barrow.
Hello, my name's Mike Maguire.
My name's Peter Kassell, I play guitar. Some of you will know my brother John. His name is John Rosengarner, but he's well known as John Mario.
So I first started in groups in 1963. I'd played the piano when I was young, gone to music lessons, but obviously in those days there were no electric pianos, so you couldn't take a piano around with you. So the first group I was in, I just sang. That was a group called the Escorts, and we played in mainly pubs. There were occasional dances, but most of the groups played in pubs, and there were a few top bands about at the time, or groups as they called them, and they didn't call them bands.
I started playing in 1960. I was 14, and within a short time of playing I joined a band, which people pretty much did in those days. You didn't need to be very good to get in a band.
Started about 13 when I was asked to join some very good friends of mine. I was at a party and they decided all of a sudden to get rid of one of the guys who they didn't like, and I was asked to join. So nobody knew what they were doing then. I said I'd be the drummer, but the existing guy who was playing bass said, no, I want to be the drummer, you can be the bass player. So that was all that was left, so I had to become a bass player.
I first got into guitar playing around 1964. I was a young kid then, about 11 years of age. The guys in the band, in John's band, used to show me chords and little things, and we both got interested and started that way.
My first band was a band called the Crescendos. We were just young kids, about 15, 16. That involved my first keyboard actually, which was a claveline, or claveline. And a big hit at that time was a tune called Telstar. I was the only one in Barrow that actually had any sort of keyboard, so we became quite popular just on the back of that one song.
I was working in Vickers at the time as a joiner, and a lad called Tony Woodend approached me, heard I'd got a guitar, which I'd bought in passes for about 10 quid, an acoustic guitar. He said, I believe you play guitar. I said, well, not really. He said, well, my brother is forming a group. This was a band called the Ramrods. We did quite well around Barrow. I think we were going out for about 8 shillings a night. We did some gigs down South Lancashire, actually. I can't remember how that came about, but they were our first trips out.
Before we turned professional, it was actually that we would make a record. And I think we self-financed our record, which at the time, in 1961, I think it would have been then, I'm sure we must have been one of the first bands ever to finance our own recordings. And we brought the record out, and it was sold locally in the music shops in Barrow, and just on the street at gigs to all the people that that we knew and that we played for.
When you're standing by my side, I heart so full of pride. When you're kissing me and I'm holding you close, that's when I think you're the most, and my heart goes sha-la-la-la-la-la-la, sha-la-la-la-la-la.
And then I joined a group called the Roadrunners, and played guitar and did backing vocals in that group. And there was Graham White, Mike Leach, Angus Anderson, and a lad called Pete Noblet that sang. But Pete was really just like a blues man, did all Chuck Berry stuff, and we wanted to change the style a little bit. And we got a new singer in called Dave Stevens, who did a bigger variety of music, which in the 60s then was coming out. And in that time, we managed to improve our equipment, because the equipment in those days, nobody could really hear the singers. It was just like a wall of noise, and unless you had somebody with a good PA system, which not many people had, it was very difficult to get a balance.
I was working in Vickers. I got approached by Ron Smith and Bob Phillipson, who came into the joiner's shop, and they convinced John Duffield and myself to join them, which turned out to be a band called the Tornadoes, which obviously not the one that made Telstar. It was spelt differently actually. With this entire Ron Smith and Bob Phillipson, and he took John Duffield and myself, and that's how we became the Tornadoes.
A lot of the songs were actually, it was called rhythm and blues. This was the original rhythm and blues, which had come from people like Chuck Berry and stuff like that. So it was kind of rock and roll, 12-bar blues in a rock and roll format, I guess. And a lot of the bands played the same kind of stuff. So you're doing songs by the Beatles and the Stones, and gradually the Searchers and the Kinks and things like that.
I used to go and see a lot of groups, the Roadrunners, Five of a Kind, various people in the YMCA. The local agent was Richard Kay, and he did the gigs at the weekend for all the local groups. I used to go and see them and got extremely interested and started playing guitar with my friends originally, although my dad was a guitar player who played country songs. Later on, I used to accompany him when I was 11 years old. My dad sang and I played, and I went on then to join various different bands around that time.
In the explosion that happened in the 60s, everything focused on Liverpool. There was a lot of bands, obviously, that we'd heard of that came from Liverpool, but there was a similar explosion here. We definitely saw the best of it. There was some great local bands, and there was lots and lots of places to play. And we, only being young at the time, we couldn't play in pubs or anything like that, so the local village halls, you know, local Grisbeck, Urswick, there was quite a lot of village halls, and a lot of youth clubs opened the doors to bands, and fortunately they didn't serve alcohol, so we were allowed to play there. And later, as we got older, we moved into playing in the pubs. But there seemed to be a pub on every corner with a band in it, and all of the village halls had some sort of fundraising event, or always had a band on anyway, and we worked all over.
We started, none of us had any gear except for Pete Kassell. Mike Corbett, Dave Corbett and myself went and got some water and went down to Crellin Street car park and started washing cars for, I think it was 2 and 6pence at the time then, to build up money to get our first gear. We went to Kelly's, and I can't remember the name of the guitar, but it was a plank with some strings on it. That was about all I can say.
The first guitar I actually got was for my 12th birthday, and I used to go up and there was a couple of music shops in town then, Kelly's Music Shop, which was on Dalton Road, and Harmony House, which was on Forshaw Street, and I used to go up and stare at guitars in the window, as you did. But I had my eyes fixed on a red Vox Stroller, which was kind of a bit of a copy of a Fender Stratocaster, nothing like as good. But I eventually bought a Burns guitar. It was a little red solid guitar with a black scratch plate. It was a bit like a Gibson SG. And the guys in the escorts who had seen a lot, they all had Burns guitars. And Burns were really popular at the time, so I got this little Burns guitar, 2 pickups and a tremolo, and it was great. And that was my first kind of guitar I owned, really.
Well, originally I had a Lucky 7 Rossetti, which was turquoise and black. I think I bought that from Harmony House. And then the next one, which I've still got, is a Fender Jazz, and I've been playing that ever since. So, 1963 Jazz.
And then in the mid-60s then, we managed to get a Vox Continental organ, which I played, which just gave the group a different sort of sound. There were a couple of other lads, Dave McGurty, who was in, I think, the Vikings, which became Chapter 5, and he had a Vox Continental organ, and Mike Pulio, who played for quite a while, he had a Vox Continental. George Nichols had a bigger, he had a Lowry or something like that, one of the big wooden ones that took 2-3 people to cart about. And basically it improved the sound or altered the sound a little bit from just guitars.
The first guitar I bought was from a place called Harmony House, and it was £14, and it was a Kent. I only kept it up until bonfire night, and then I decided to get another one, which I bought off the famous Peter Kassell, which was a Burns Sonic, a red one, and I used that for quite a lot of years. It was really good.
I had a couple of friends who were interested, and I actually got my first band was with John's brother-in-law, Danny Smythe, who wanted to sing. And we teamed up with Dave Heaviside and Mike and Dave Corbett, and we formed a little band then. Our first name was The Realistics, and we used to practice just in the houses, in the front rooms, on acoustic guitars and things, and just started to learn to play. And we eventually got enough money to kind of get together some cheap electric guitars and a couple of little amplifiers. And I borrowed a guitar actually off one of the guys in the escorts, Graham White. He lent me a guitar, and we started doing gigs.
When we got a little bit older so we could drive, I was born in 50 and I started playing drums when I was 12. So the first band that I played in was in 63. It was a school band, and we played at the local cinema, the ABC. It was the Metros. And it was just my brother on bass and two more school friends. And that band turned into us group, and then the Defenders.
Yeah, I actually started in a band when I was 15. At that time I was a butcher's boy. I used to ride a big bike and deliver meat all over the town from the Co-op Butchers in Dalton Road. My career zoomed from then, and I went up to be a postal delivery guy on the red motorbikes. And I used to have to get up very early, so that didn't go down too well with the late gigs.
The first gig I can remember doing, I think, was our first official gig was at St. Perrins Club in Roos, one Friday night, and we were on with Group 3. And we played a gig then, and then I can remember playing at Preston Street Working Men's Club. I think we did that about the Christmas. That was a big gig for us, a big local club and lots of people in there. And then really we started playing the YMCA. That was a home kind of gig for us. We used to practice there and play a lot of gigs there, and they used to put on a lot of local bands.
When we very first started playing, we a lot of the gigs were at the YMCA, and it was a place where everybody who was a teenager used to go on a Saturday night and have fun. The enjoyment levels were fantastically high. Everybody was there to enjoy themselves. Very, very rarely was there any trouble. And Dick Kay, who organised them, was a fantastic bloke. He sorted bands out. He was the manager of a lot of them. His thoughts and his ideas were what started an awful lot of bands throughout Barrow.
I joined the Escorts, which was the first version of the Escorts, with Ronnie Brooks, Ray Wassell, Barney Lappin, and we did local gigs. After that, I left the Escorts when I got an offer from the Trendsetters, Frankie and the Trendsetters, which was sort of the biggest band around here at the time in 1960. And all of a sudden I went to playing like 6 nights a week, you know, and sometimes a Sunday afternoon as well. I'd go to the gigs and you know, maybe the Duke of Edinburgh, and there'd be a queue outside waiting to get in, and it'd be going right down to the mail office. We'd played at the Railway Club on a Saturday night, and again there'd be a queue going all the way down to nearly the rink, which was still operating in those days.
We played everywhere in Barrow. There was hundreds of places to play at, and we could play 6 nights a week very easily. The first band I played in was a band called The Realistics, with Pete Kassell, Danny Smythe, Mike and Dave Corbett. That became Five of a Kind, and we played for a year or so at that, and then we were fortunate enough to join forces with a band called the Roadrunners. Some of the guys left, and Peter and I joined with John Rosengarn and Mike Leach, and we started playing then. And so that became quite a good band, Angel's Payment. We toured everywhere in obviously the Cumbria area, down to Nelson and up the coast, and had some fantastic fun over a lot of years.
Well, at that time the 99 Club had just started up. That had just got going, which was Barrow's first nightclub. But as well as that, there was the Duke of Edinburgh, which was always packed. It was alive. Everything was alive. And then you had the Railway Club on St George's Square, which was an amazing night. It was probably one of my favourites. Everything was just buzzing. Everything was new. The Beatles had just started. Everyone wanted to listen to music, and everyone wanted to see you in whatever group you were playing in. And you could virtually have, you know, 5 nights out, 6 nights out a week in them days, because there was somewhere every night that had a group on. And not only just one place, there'd be several places that you could go to midweek where there'd be different bands on, and you could have a pint and listen to your favourite band.
Everywhere seemed really busy. There was always lots of people at everything, you know, dances. You'd have dances in St Matthew's Hall or St Luke's Hall and places like that. There was no alcohol served in these things, so everybody was just drinking pop.
As we got to driving age and we could get ourselves around a little easier, we started going out to Urswick, Millham, big day out in Whitehaven sometimes. It was just an explosion, and the times that we had, it were just amazing. You could, everybody in the other groups were cooperative and friendly. It wasn't like a rivalry. You know, if you needed to borrow equipment, there was always somebody that would lend you some.
Places we used to play were like the Burlington, the Criterion, St Perrins at Roos, Ascombe Lots. We never really travelled much, but we did travel to a place called the Imperial Ballroom at Nelson that had quite a lot of famous acts. It was a big, I think it was an old warehouse or aeroplane hangar or something like that.
It was difficult at first getting into pubs, but we managed to in the end. We used to play the Imperial and the Criterion.
The Public Hall was one of the big events. That was a group from out of town would play, and we'd play as well in there. And also the Coronation Hall at Ulverston, where we used to do one spot, and the Five of a Kind used to do a spot, and we did the 4 hours between us, an hour each. We didn't have our own van, so we used to get all the gear in one van, and I think half the lads used to go up on the bus and come back on the bus. And I think one night some of the lads had to walk home, if I remember rightly.
We weren't able to drive because we weren't old enough, so we used to actually have to physically carry the gear around the streets, just walking with it, or take it on the bus somewhere.
Myself, Tony Flanagan, and Frank Hayes and Alan Davies started a band called the Vikings, and this involved a well-known guy from Barrow, a bass guitarist called Glenn Cornick. He was with us on bass, and we used to play places like the Burlington Hotel, which was a great venue. The amount of people that used to come were unbelievable, and that was the first time I ever witnessed people actually dancing on the tables, which seemed to be, because there simply wasn't room on the floor. So, marvellous days. And we played just pop songs of the day, Freddie and the Dreamers, the Beatles. We weren't trying to be anything too clever, just enjoyed the music. It was really good stuff. When Glenn left, we changed our name to Chapter 5, and we got in a sax player called Dave Roberts, and we started doing the soul stuff.
I played in the Trendsetters with John Hutchie and Frank Hill, John Duffy and Reg Jordan, and they were about, I would think about 22, something like that. And it wasn't long before they'd all served an apprenticeship in the shipyard, and it wasn't long before they decided they wanted to turn professional. And it came to the point where I had to make a decision. I was an office boy in Vickers at the time, which would mean that I would probably get a good apprenticeship, I would think. And I decided that I wanted to go with them, which was pretty obvious for a 15-year-old lad. So off we went down to Manchester, and we had a couple of years of... I wouldn't have missed it, let's put it that way. They were fantastic times, and we would play at places, and you know, like we would do the big Mecca places in Manchester, and we would play alternative dinner times with Herman's Hermits, and they one day came in and they'd got this record out, and we all sat listening to it, and Dave Lee Travis was the disc jockey. He was only a young fella. We were all young fellas at the time. And we sat listening to it, and a week later they were top of the charts, and we didn't see him again. So that was how it went, you know. We came back to Barrow when things didn't work out, but I wouldn't have missed any of it.
Many of the top turns, big stars from America who came, but I remember going once and it was supposed to be Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, and my friend Dave Heaviside knew all these American bands, and he said, no, he said, that's not Smokey Robinson. It was nothing like him. I'd never heard of him, to be quite honest, but, and then people were complaining, so there was a lot that went on in those days. There were a lot of groups called the Drifters, and they weren't the originals, but they used to get away with quite a lot.
Yeah, when Chapter 5 started to become well known, we made a couple of records for CBS, and we were out of town quite a lot, but the local crowds used to come to see us at the public hall or whatever, and they used to actually scream. I think it was with pleasure, but I'm not too sure. And many, many years later, in the 70s, one of the songs that we did with CBS was a song I wrote called You Can't Mean It, which became a bit of a Northern Soul classic. And it's been released several times over the years, and in fact it's just been released again just a few weeks ago, so that's been a source of delight for me over the years, and I'm still writing songs as well, apart from You Can't Mean It. I do write other things.
A lot of great musicians come out of Barrow. A lot of famous people have come out of Barrow. but all talented, very talented people. And that really made a lot of people learn how to play. It's a very good place and a very talented place.
I'm fortunate to say there's been a tremendous amount of people in Barrow that have been extremely good musicians and have made it such an easy journey from the early 60s until the present time.
Yeah, it was just a really friendly atmosphere. It was great. It was a great time to play. It was a great time to grow up. And I'm glad we saw it, actually, because what the kids have got to deal with today is nothing like it was for us.
It was different days and different things, but still enjoyable. And it's amazing how many of my friends from those days are still playing now, and we're still playing the same music in a lot of cases.
To this present time, I'm still playing and enjoying myself thoroughly. The day that I stop enjoying playing will be the day that I pack in.
The people that we play for all seem to enjoy it and got good followings, and yeah, it's really quite an interesting period.
We were young and it was just good fun.
We enjoyed it. It was good times. I'm glad we saw it.
Okay.
Time goes so slow, it's not easy to live in the memories of love that you gave to me. Yesterday's sunshine has gone. Baby, I keep on picturing you, and your smile keeps on haunting me all of the while. Baby, yesterday's sunshine has gone. Baby, something's got a hold of my heart. Now I'm waiting for the crying to stop. Baby, something's gotta give, or I don't wanna live. Something's got a hold of my heart. There was a time I could easily have laughed in your face, but now you're not so easily replaced, and the world's such an unfriendly place.